folks, Scott here with the new My Monthly Hero June 2022 kit. Hero Arts was having a little bit of supply chain issues this month, so my kit came a little bit late. Let's dive right in, make this really quick. This is our Under the Sea Mermaid Extravaganza. This is our 6x8 inch stamp set featuring this great big mermaid with great big hair. We've got a jellyfish, coral, seagrass. There's a lovely fish, a good sized fish here. There's a little pearl in a clam, little starfish, bubbles, a small scallop. Happy birthday, you are a pearl of a friend. Hello, thank you, pearls, just want to have fun. That's kind of a groaner. You are one of a kind. That's our stamp set. We also, of course, get matching dies this month. This is the die that will cut out the mermaid, and of course we have the seagrass and the jelly and the fish and the coral and the little pieces and the oyster clam shell. And then, of course, we get some extras in the kit. We get a new palette reactive ink pad. This is actually made up of a lot of the reactive inks in the Hero Hues lines. This is Berry Smoothie, Grape Slush, Blue Hawaii, Splash, and Blue Raspberry. A nice new reactive palette ink pad. We also get some pearls, some flat-sided pearls. And finally, last but not least, a water flow brush, because I believe, as we all know, the reactive inks are reactive with water. That's everything that comes in our kit this month. Looks like we are going under the sea, spending some time with this mermaid with gigantic hair and playing with reactive inks. Let's dive right in, pun intended. And here we have my 10 cards. Everything's on white card bases. Looks like we have a shaped card here, maybe a interactive card there. Now with the palette ink pad, those reactive inks, and that big mermaid stamp, I was ready to do some serious coloring this month. Now, when I see a stamp set like this, my mind automatically goes to creating a scene. So first things first, I did stamp the mermaid on some masking paper and cut her out. I made a big mask for my whole mermaid, which of course I used on this first card, white card base, and we have You Are a Pearl of a Friend, my first scene with this great stamp. So I stamped the mermaid on some Bristol Smooth cardstock with intense black ink. I masked her off and stamped the seagrass and the coral and one of the starfish over here. I stamped the clams and the extra starfish without needing the mask. And then I colored everything except for her tail, colored everything with my Zig Clean Color real brush markers. I love the little sea I got going in the background there. I did use the Mermaid Reactive Palette ink pad to color her tail. Those Zig markers move so well on Bristol Smooth cardstock. The sentiment is stamped with intense black ink and embossed with some clear embossing powder. I used a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die to cut that panel to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. Glued that to a white card base, added a pearl gem right there, and I love that the little pearl gems fit just perfectly in the stamped pearl and even leaves the black line around it so it still looks like part of the drawing. The only touch of dimension on this single layer card. I did use a little white gel pen for some little white highlights in the sand around her. I tell you, she must be using some volumizing mousse in that hair. This did take me a couple hours to paint, but I think it's worth it. You Are a Pearl of a Friend. Now, the jellyfish stamp in our kit this month must be the largest jellyfish stamp I own now. I do have some other jellyfish stamps, but they're all smaller. This is our jellyfish card, thank you card. Now, I stamped the 5 jellyfish on some pitch black cardstock using embossing and watermark ink, and then I embossed that with the underwater embossing powder. This powder we got in the My Monthly Hero May of 2021 kit, a glittery blue embossing powder, some nice glitter to all of our jellyfish here. I ink blended some water lines using some Broken China Distress Oxide ink and a small blending brush for the background. And then I colored the jellyfish using Hero Art's red, purple, and blue glimmer metallic inks. We've gotten these in different kits over the years, and they do still sell these. I painted those with that, so that just gives us, look at that, it's a little more shine on the entire jellyfish there. I added some glimmer ink dots in the water background and some white highlights with a white gel pen. I stamped and embossed the sentiment using ultrafine white embossing powder. I did cut that thank you sentiment in half so I could stack them on top of each other instead of in a straight line. I die cut the panel with another Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die and added a dark blue pearlescent matte behind that and glued those down to my white card base. You can get a really nice underwater background with just a little bit of light ink blending and my favorite black cardstock of all time, Hero Art's Pitch Black cardstock. Thank you. Now, we don't always get puns in our sentiment stamps, but this month we are treated to not only a pun, but a real kind of groaner. So for card number 3, we have pearls just want to have fun. Ooh, if they're having fun, then maybe they're dancing. All featured in some fantastic underwater chorus line. So this is on Canson mixed media cardstock. When I was setting up my new craft room and storing everything, I found this pack of Canson mixed media cardstock. So I thought, oh, this is like halfway used. I should continue to use it. So that's my cardstock here. I stamped all of the clams in 3 rows using my Misty and Intense Black ink. I colored them all with my Zig markers. I stamped and clear embossed the sentiment. I die cut that panel with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I added a glitter holographic matte behind that. I think you can see that. Nice fun sparkle on that matte. And I glued those both down to my white card base. I did embellish that. These are some Love from Lizzie circle peel-offs. I don't use those very often, but they were perfect for this card. I did add little movement lines to the edges of all of my clams here to show that they are tapping their shells away. And of course, I added the pearl gems inside each one of the open clams. I was actually able to cut these 2 pearl gems using my 7-inch Tim Holtz snips. These were strong enough to cut off like a third of both of those pearl gems, so they fit on the 2 edges of that center row where we only have half of the pearls stamped. Yes, pearls just want to have fun. I think the only way you could improve on this bad pun is to make it worse. All I could think of was pearls just want to have pun. Yep, I think that's even more of a groaner there. But a fun card. Pearls just want to have fun. So tell me, is all that hair really necessary for our mermaid? You can actually give her a substantial haircut fairly simply. So card number 4, we've got another thank you card with less hair. I stamped our mermaid using Intense Black ink on some Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I embossed her with clear embossing powder. Now, I colored her with my Zig markers. I used the palette ink pad for her tail, but her skin and hair are with my Zig markers. And I fussy cut her out following the 4th line of hair from her scalp, and just followed those lines to the edge of her hair. That got rid of a good half of her hair there. That's quite a haircut we just gave her. I like that. I think she looks terrific. And embossing this mermaid stamp is highly recommended. Look at the shine on that. And actually giving her a haircut might make her seem less of a daunting coloring task. Now, this background is an old jelly plate print I made using Broken China Distress Oxide ink and a wave stamp. We've gotten a lot of underwater themed stamp sets from Hero Arts over the years, Is that because they're located in the Bay Area? So I do have a number of underwater backgrounds patiently waiting to be used. There's probably more in my stash out here. But I stamped the seagrass and the coral on the background using contour ink, and I softly colored them using the palette inks. I stamped the bubbles with some hickory smoke distress oxide ink and clear embossed them for even a little bit more shine. And of course, I used that terrific Hero Art sand embossing powder for the bottom of the ocean here, giving her something nice to sit on. I also sprayed that whole panel down with some shimmer mist spray. Underwater, I think everything has to shine. I cut this front panel to 4 inches by 5¼ inches. I added a thin black glitter mat and glued those down to a white card base. I stamped and embossed the sentiment, "Thank you," side by side on a scrap of craft cardstock. I fussy cut that out and I added the mermaid and the sentiment using foam tape. Now, I have, of course, had a few puns floating around my head since I got this kit, so I continued this thank you on the inside of the card with "You mermaid my day." I printed this on the inside of my card base using my Silhouette software and the Rostilla font. "You mermaid my day." That's a perfectly punny accompaniment for a thank you card. Okay, that got me started on the puns. Here comes some puns. This card is actually a little box card that folds open. A little 3-dimensional. Card number 5 is "Thanks for all your kelp." Oh, that makes me giggle. We've got 3 layers of kelp or seagrass, and the whole thing folds flat to 4¼ by 5½ inches. So, of course, it does fit perfectly in an A2 envelope. Get that kelp inside there. There you go. Open it up, fold it out. Of course, it stands up beautifully. "Thanks for all your kelp." The back of it has got plenty of room to write your own personal message. I actually remembered to turn on the camera for a few moments while I was putting this together. Here's how I made this fairly simple little 3-dimensional box card by hand. So I thought I would just wing it. I thought I could figure out how to make one of these box cards myself. This is a piece of 110-pound Nina Solar White cardstock. This is 5½ by 5¼ 5½ by 5¼ I've already gone ahead and printed the sentiment on the bottom here, and we're going to score this. So this is my calculations. I think they'll work. We're going to score at 1/4 inch, and then 3/4 inch, and then 4½ inches, 4½. That should get us to the other side of our sentiment. Yes. And then 5 inches. So that leaves us one little 1/4 inch tab on the end over there. So that should be our front. Now, to get the window in the middle of this, I'm going to take this is a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. This is 4½ by 3¼ so it's an inch smaller. And we're going to place it between these 2 score marks and try to leave the same amount at the top here. And that frames our sentiment at the bottom very nicely. Let's tape that down. Let's run it through the die cutter. And there we have our window. Let's fold along our score lines now. This tab will glue to the back of the card. Here's our little box. I've cut a back to the same size. So that'll be our background. And it should, when it's folded flat, be 4¼ inches wide. So this should be 5½ by 4¼ and it is 4¼ so that will fit in an A2 envelope and pop open for a card. Let me gather the rest of these pieces and we'll come back and put it all together. I went ahead and stamped and die cut a whole bunch of the seaweed or the kelp, stamped it in different colors. I used some of these Altenew gradient cardstocks 1, 2, and 3, stamped those with some Hero Arts Fresh Lawn, moss, and forest green, then did a little Copic coloring on those, a little sparkle with my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen, and of course I did die cut them all out. Now I've got 3 pieces. This is 1/4 inch by 4 3/4 inches, scored at 1/2 inch on each side. And then I went through and I put 1/8 inch score tape on this one and cut it down to that at the score. I put 1/4 inch score tape on this one, cut that down to that score tape. And then on this one, I put 3/8 inch score tape on the edges. So the deal is just to get 3 spacer bars at different lengths so that they're all different distances from the back of the card. So let's try putting this together. Let's see if my plans worked. I'm going to use liquid glue just because I like the wiggle room that it gives me. And we're going to glue everything just to one side to start with. So I'm adding glue to the back 1/4 inch flap of my front piece. I'm going to add my back piece to that, put it right in the corner, and we do want this to fold over, so just checking to make sure that that will fold over, opens up flat. There's our first piece. So we want the one with the longest tabs to go down here at the bottom. So I'm going to peel off my liner paper from one side, and I'm going to add it behind the fold here, fairly straight across. That looks pretty good. We're going to put our darkest ones in the front here. So we'll start about in the center here. I don't want any white showing, so we'll raise that up just a little bit. And I can wiggle it around. I chose this one for the center because my die cutting was just a little bit off on one side, and I can cover that up with the next one. A little more glue. I'll lean this one just a little bit. Scoot him over a touch. If we've got any white showing, we can touch that up at the end here with a little alcohol marker or something. And then our third one, scoot that over a bit, and just a little bit more. And there is our first layer of kelp. Okay, so we want our second layer to be about there, and we want our third layer to be about there, I think. So we'll take the second longest one. This is the one with the 1/4 inch tape. I'm going to tape this one in the space here towards the back. We'll add our kelp to this. We've got 4 pieces for this layer. Goodness, and that's only 2 layers. Our third layer is going to use this third piece. I'm going to shoot for this to be, I think, about right there against the back fold. And we'll add our next layer of seaweed or seagrass or kelp, as the case may be. Maybe we can get a little bit of, maybe a little more flowy with that set. I think that's what we want. We'll let these dry for a bit. While they're drying, take a little alcohol marker to the white spaces. Do go ahead and protect the background. I could have just cut these out of green, I suppose, but I didn't think about it at the time. Just a little bit of camouflage for them. Okay, I want to make sure that these are really attached well. I am going to go ahead and use score tape over here. I may regret it, but we will see. It's 1/4 inch score tape, so it fits on that 1/4 inch tab just perfectly. So theoretically, I should be able to fold this over and get that last tab to fold up. But it looks like I'm a little bit long here, so I'm just going to trim off just a little bit of that background right there. Just a little sliver. It's because we're not right, we're right up against the fold there, not in it. So let's try that again. Just another hair off. There we go. I see it flipping over now. So we'll take the liner paper off of our tabs, all 3 of them. 1, 2, and 3. Close this side of the card. Lay these as straight across as possible. They shouldn't impede the crease because we already trimmed them down. Those look pretty good. Burnish those down. Fold this over. Fold the top flap over. Move our liner tape. Fold that down. Give this all a good burnish. And let's see what we've got. That's exactly what I was going for. We can trim off a little bit of this one. We don't want her sticking over the top. And I do have these lines on the back, so I actually cut another piece of cardstock to dress that up on the back. We'll put a little glue on that, and we'll glue that to the back of our card, which ultimately this is going to be our writing surface because there's no place else on the card to write. Just line that up. Everything seems to be holding up quite well. And there's our Sea of Kelp. Thanks for all your kelp. If pearls just want to have fun, then thanks for all your kelp is certainly a worthwhile pun with this kit. And there's more puns coming. The fish stamp in this stamp set is actually quite nice. It's large enough to be a focal point all on its own and detailed enough to lend itself to some fun coloring. Our next card on another white card base is You're Something Special. You're Something Special. I think this one tickles me too. I stamped the fish with intense black ink on some Bristol Smooth cardstock. I did clear emboss that for a little sparkle on our wet fish. I did use the palette ink pad to color the fish, and I die cut it out with the included die. Now this background again is a saved background I made using a Nouveau shimmer powder. This is in the Green Parade color. I thought it worked perfectly for this. I stamped and white embossed some bubbles on the background. They didn't take too perfectly to this shimmer powder, but they did okay. And then I die cut the background with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, and I added a true black mirror cardstock. I found this mirror cardstock. Here you go. Now there's some black mirror cardstock that reads really black. This is memoryboxcompany.com, sold by Simon Says Stamp, black shiny cardstock. Love that. And it's black. And I glued the background of the mat down to a white card base. I printed this sentiment on a piece of matte photo paper. Now, I printed it first on just plain cardstock, and I like being able to print white sentiments on a black background, but this just didn't cut it. I didn't think it was black enough, especially using that black mirror cardstock. So I printed it on some matte photo paper. Came out nice, gives us a nice touch of shine on that sentiment too. Really makes it very black. You're Something Special. That again was printed using the Rostilla font, and I die cut that with a Hero Arts circle nesting die. Now I didn't care for a white mat behind that sentiment cut with the next larger circle die, so I just cut 5 pieces of white cardstock the same size as our sentiment and glued those all together, glued the sentiment on top of those, glued those down to the card front, and that gives us a nice, very subtle white frame. From almost any angle you're looking at it, you can see a little bit of the white outline around that. I added the fish with some foam tape and then added some Hero Arts clear enamel dots to help those bubbles out a little bit. You're something special. And I think all of you are something special. And we're not done yet. More puns to come. I'm actually a little surprised that this pun wasn't included in our stamp set. It does seem perfectly obvious, and we have You Go Pearl. If you're going to do pearls just want to have fun, then why not go all in with You Go Pearl? I couldn't resist. So I stamped this little vignette on some Bristol Smooth cardstock using a 4-inch Gina K Designs Wreath Builder template. Love having those templates in my stash. I tell you, those stencils and your trusty Misty make short work out of precision stamping like this. After stamping, I printed this sentiment using my Silhouette software and my favorite Brady Bunch remastered font. I colored this all with my Zig Clean Color real brush markers and die cut the panel with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I added a very thin black glitter mat behind that and then glued that on top of this yellow metallic cardstock cut with another Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. Glue them all down to a white card base. All that's left is a pearl gem right in the center. You go, Pearl. So I was thinking about different ways to use that mermaid stamp without having to necessarily color the whole thing, when I came upon the idea that no one has ever really seen a mermaid, so they must be adept at blending into their background. That inspired this card. You are one of a kind. I think this is such an interesting card. So again, on a piece of that Canson multimedia cardstock, I stamped our mermaid stamp using the Mermaid palette ink pad. You can see she is green at the bottom, purple at the top. I used this ink pad to stamp her and embossed her with some clear embossing powder just to lock that stamping onto our base. Now I've had this Pebeo drawing gum liquid frisket in my stash for a while. I don't think I've ever used it. This is the first time I used it, but this is like this is a liquid mask. I actually, after I stamped her and embossed her, I painted the liquid mask over all of her fleshy parts, covering it up completely, just staying on her skin. I let that dry, and then I ink smooshed the whole panel using the palette ink pad and let that dry. So again, you can see the purple on the top, the greener on the bottom. Ink smushed this whole thing and then let that dry. And then I took my homemade water ripple stencil and laid that over the top and ink blended some splash reactive ink over the background. So that gave us the nice water pattern in that splash reactive ink. I let that dry, spattered everything with some water, sopped that up with a paper towel, give us our little spots and dots. I did stamp the bubbles a couple of times with embossing and watermark ink and clear embossed those, added a little water to the center of those to make them stand out. I stamped the sentiment over here using grape slush reactive ink and embossed that with some clear embossing powder too. Nice and shiny, this whole card. Once the whole background was done, I peeled off that drawing gum from her skin. It peeled off so easily and it covered that area so completely. I was really excited. I then colored her with my Zig Clean Color markers. I die cut that panel and the mat with a rounded rectangle infinity die. The mat is dark blue pearlescent cardstock. I glued those two together, glued those down to a white card base that, of course, I corner chompered the corners. You are one of a kind. A few clear enamel dots highlight the sentiment, and I love the whole idea behind this card. And the mermaid, I think she came out just magically ethereal with minimal coloring. One of a kind indeed. Okay, I do have one more pun for you this month, and this seems like another obvious pun to me in a nice oval-shaped card, and we have a fish you were here. I couldn't resist. I stamped one fish and reverse stamped the other on some Bristol Smooth cardstock using a silicone mat and my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I colored both fish with my Tombow markers and die cut them with the matching die. I just hold the reverse stamped fish up to a window or bright light, and you can line up the die on the back side of the paper very easily. I watercolored the background on a panel of that Canson multimedia cardstock using Tombow markers and some water, and when that was dry, I printed the sentiment using my Silhouette software and the Blackjack font. Fish you were here. I stamped the bubbles on the background and glittered everything up with some sheer shimmer spritz there. The background is all sparkly. I think you can see that there. Now, I created the card base using the largest Hero Arts oval infinity dies. I'm just working my way through all of the infinity dies this month. And I cut that die from 2 pieces of cardstock. And then on the back piece, I just scored it at 1/4 inch, folded that, glued that to the front piece. That makes our front perfectly round. That gives us a nice hinge for our shaped card. I used the next smaller oval die to die cut the colored panel and glued that to my card base. I attached the fish with foam tape, and I am really thrilled with this oval shaped card. It's unique, very colorful, and I think it's a really good pun. Fish, you were here. I think using all of those Hero Arts Infinity dies led me to my final card this month. We've got more hair, but less mermaid. For card number 10, we've got You Are Amazing. No mermaids at all. I stamped the top half of our mermaid stamp on some Nina Solar White cardstock using some intense black ink. Now, I did have to wipe away just the top part of her tail there to stamp it. I was figuring that I would cut this right where her tail starts. Right there is the cut on that. You can see right there her tail starts. So from there to there, I had to wipe that tail away when I stamped it. Easy enough, and it was extremely easy to use a permanent black marker to connect the lines once the tail was gone and add more lines at the top of her hair to complete the whole. What is this? That's 2 3/4 inch circle infinity die. I colored her with my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers. Here's a quick shot of the markers I used. Not very many, just 8 of them. I just used simple dots of color in 3 shades of brownish gray to color her hair. I even added some sparkle into her hair with a Jelly Roll Stardust glitter pen. I die cut her out. That's a 2 3/4 inch circle infinity die, and I added a 3-inch die cut circle white matte behind that. Now, this background is an old background stamp from my stash. I don't think I've used it in a long time, if ever. I thought it went perfectly with our round theme here. I stamped that on some white cardstock using Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide ink. I die cut that with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I matted that to more of that true black mirror cardstock and glued that down to my white card base. Now, I trimmed the You Are away from the You Are a Pearl sentiment and stamped that with intense black ink, and then added the Amazing. That's a die from our My Monthly Hero April of 22 kit just a few months ago, and I die cut that from that great black shiny mirror cardstock. Finally, I added the 2 circles to the front of the card using some foam tape. Now, I knew what I wanted to do when I started this card, but I was actually taken a bit by surprise after die cutting the stamp into a circle and realizing how much it looks like a perfectly retro afro. There certainly are no mermaids on this card. I hope you love this card as much as I do. That's all of my cards for this month, folks. I did use every stamp in this stamp set, except, of course, for the hello and happy birthday sentiments. And I used the palette ink pad a great deal, as well as a few of the dies and plenty of the pearl gems, but I've got lots of those pearl gems left. Once I started working with this kit, the ideas started to flow, and I'm thrilled with some of the really unique looks that we were able to get. This kit is still available at Hero Arts. If I've caught your imagination or inspired some ideas of your own, you'd like to grab a kit for yourself, please use my links in the description down below. When you go shopping at Hero Arts, it is always supremely appreciated, and it truly does help support this channel. And while you're at it, if you click that thumbs up at the top of the page, it helps YouTube send this video to other like-minded people. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me here. I'm always appreciative of your attention. Let me know what cards are your favorite. Please remember to like me, list me, pin me, post me, follow me, friend me, share me with all of your friends. Don't run with scissors. And I send you and yours love and light, and happy crafting. For more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.